One of the best combat systems, a memorable soundtrack, and a concept that just a few remember. Another year has passed and the sequel to the beloved Dragon Ball portable game developed by DIMS was finally released. Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai 2 would arrive on March 20th, 2007. Great support deserves great content. Here is the review of Shin Budokai 2 as promised. Hope you enjoy, guys. If you are attentive to detail, you may have noticed that by this point I have done a good amount of reviews and retrospective reviews of some of our favorite Naruto and Dragon Ball games. And in much of those games, I usually have a trend to highlight the infinite cycle of its game systems, something I do not regret, but I do feel in a part a small feel of guilt. It is not fair to the developers of a game to blame them for the repetitiveness of their decisions in an anime game. It is complicated that such a specific genre is not linked to some factor that makes its attractiveness last for a long time. Even so, with the appropriate time and dedication, that can be considered an excuse. There are thoughts and ideas that give rise to modes, gameplays, and challenges that despite repeating its formula, it manages to give a sensation of addiction and, most importantly, innovation. This is the case without Budokai 2, or at least so I see it from my point of view. Let me tell you why I feel this title is one of the most underrated Dragon Ball games that have ever existed. To start strong and with one foot into nostalgia, this seems to me one of the openings with the best soundtrack of the games developed by DIMS, which could compete with Budokai 3, but it does with only a little melody give identity to the game, only with that musical fragment. Below what awaits for us is a menu with different game modes, a visual trace of what was the first Shin Budokai. Only now it is no longer a dragon pad, it is another pad as you see here, but this is a story mode that presents a format pretty close as we already said that what delivered in its predecessor. However, it has a much more interesting background. The story is based on a different timeline, more specifically in the timeline of future Trunks, but it gives rise to several events of the Majin Buu saga, all being modified to shape this made for the game story. The fan service is present in every corner, but more than that, I see it as a means to involve the new characters in the plot without feeling forced. Well, it feels forced at the end, but the point is that they are intended to give an extra challenge to unlock said enemies in versus and arcade game modes. Imagine that for a moment the things that happened to Gohan at the beginning of the Buu saga happened to Trunks. Basically, that is the prologue of the story. Then characters like Metal Cooler, Broly began to get involved with the excuse that they are being mentally controlled by Babidi. We also have intertwined timelines with the Gohan we know and the future Gohan, just like in the series. The Supreme Kai unlocks the hidden potential of this Gohan and help us in the fight to restore peace, gather the Dragon Balls, and more. The game features some iconic encounters that are appreciated, like that meeting of Goku with Bardock in the other world. Bardock is a brutal character in this game. Numerous elements make up the path that you must overcome in each mission. For example, the events take place in an open world that, more than giving the option of exploration, is a means by which you can move freely in order to stop your adversary. Here the enemies have two objectives: destroy you and destroy the cities around you. If any city is completely destroyed, you automatically lose the game, so you must prevent your adversary advance to civilization. Once you meet him, they have a classic battle to which they got us used to in the last installment. If you beat him, you can eliminate him completely or repel him away from the city in case he has more lives remaining. That's right, the enemies have numerous lives conditioned by the level in which you are, just like you. They are represented in sensu beams from here to side. Villains get held up if they destroy a city, and in the same way, you can get held up if you hold over a city while it gets up. City indicators are in the upper left corner. Both your life and your ki and your sensu beams have continuous progression, which means that the damage and the energy expenditure as well as the lives you lose are accumulable, so you must be careful in each of the combats. Surely more than one has realized that the camera perspective is a little different from what we've seen before. It is no longer a fully 2D angle, but is more like the third person one of an arena fighter with a little Tenkaichi air, so to speak. Going back to the story mode, depending on your performance in each scenario, the game will open a specific path for you that leads you to the next chapter of the story or alternate combat. It is always preferred to repeat the scenario to open both paths and find extra rewards. In each scenario you may have a different objective, so they give you a choose between some fields, either to save something or someone, or also to get benefits that can help you later in a combat. Depending on your current situation, you can freely choose what to do first on these occasions. The game continues with this story tracked by dialogues with static images, but with occasions dubbed by the original voice actors of the anime in Japan. In addition to this, the soundtrack used is the original of the series. That is a point in favor. They are sound immersion that had only been able to experience through game modes like Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and I'm very happy that the licenses were obtained for this game. The character models, when standing in this open space, I guess they were okay for a 2007 game on PSP, but they still feel very unpolished, as if they were lazy to give them a proper rendering. I remember it much better, to be honest, although it was probably also due to lack of time in development. After a certain point, the amount of enemies increases in such a way that you will need partners to fight simultaneously with you. You can choose these partners to the extent possible with those you have unlocked. While you are on the battlefield, you can see their status in combat with the opponents in the bar below. They don't have extra lives, so if they die, they're gone forever, but you can approach them at any time and give them a senzu bean, so they have support. You can see them fight actually. Another element added was the collection, or as appropriate, the recovery of the Dragon Balls that spawn throughout the field, and you must collect them within an established limit of time. If some enemy find them first, you must defeat them to take it off, and in the same way, if they beat you, they can take the spheres you have. Well, the deal with this much more complicated terrain than the Dragon Pad mode of the first game ever was, it features a system of upgrades that much more encourages the player to use them to their benefit. Each character that you meet and unlock in the story mode can be powered up with this upgrade in the form of cards that are placed in the available slots in each fighter. Some improve attack, defense, or other specific attributes. Also, there are others that give an additional plus to the existing boosts. Finally, there are the ultimate improvements, which are the most reflected in the gameplay, but you can only use one per character. This improvement system is designed so that the player does not go over enemies in such a direct way, but has to use the head when assembling his squad and choosing advantages over others to pass the level. After each fight, you are rewarded with a new card, and in the store you can get even more to become a much more complete fighter. No worry if the missions cannot be completed the first time. Many are conditioned by the performance of your partners, which eventually end up failing, no much as you apply improvements to them. This new Dragon Pad can take you even more than 20 hours to complete 100%, much longer than the first Shin Budokai. And at that time I realized that this game manages to harass you a lot with the increasing difficulty of the rivals, the amount of health they have, and at the same time the objectives of keeping cities safe, finding the Dragon Balls, and everything running against the clock. Counting with partners who can do great things, it manages to put you in situations of a lot of tension, and here enters the point I touched at the beginning of the video. Is the gameplay system repetitive? Yes. Is that bad? No. And here's why. The fights, which is considered the repetitive point of the gameplay, are not the end of the story. They are the middle. Having such a fluid and direct combat system, which we will talk about later, you can create a comfortable mission rhythm that doesn't feel like doing the same over and over. It is a strategic move to defend cities and avoid unnecessary confrontations. This is what Naruto Ultimate Ninja Heroes 2 made missing. If you ever watched that video, you will remember that one of the main problems of this game was that it drained its resources very quickly, even though they were interesting. That doesn't happen here, and they managed to combine their weak points with well-thought game mechanics so they were not boring, everything turning around a story that is not even canon. I swear to you, you can lie here for hours and hours and you don't even realize it. The base gameplay. That dynamic gameplay of the first title was kept, and it was a success to not make any major changes in the mechanics, but a couple of new elements were added that would nourish the gameplay much more. As I said in the previous video, the key release mechanic was an element that I applauded very much in the first Shin Budokai, a mechanic that gave that missing touch to the combat system. If Fighters has the dash and Naruto Storm has the chakra run, the Shin Budokai had this move, and I didn't think it could be improved, but it turns out they did. This point, which gave such good results in the past, another utility was added. You can now release ki constantly by holding X and right trigger pressed to create a momentary aura of invincibility. It means that any attack could be neutralized if it was done well, even the ultimate. At first I was afraid that they would ruin or unbalance the way of playing this, but to level it, a new meter was added that shows the amount of stamina your character has left. If you take cover for a long time, the guard will break, and if you have been abusing the release of ki for a long time, the same happens. Other elements like the finishing of the chase combos were also included. Each character had their own unique animation, a more cinematic touch to the gameplay. Finally, each character had a special aura that could be activated once per combat. This is activated with 2 triggers at the same time, and they have different effects depending on the type that they are. There are some like Goku's, which gives him a very great power in the attack but quickly reduces his ki. Other like Vegeta's, which only increases his attack power without losing another resource, and other more broken like Broly's, which gives him invulnerability to physical blows. There is everything. As for the roster, it was expanded a little, not much but just the necessary. There are 24 characters in total. New inclusions like Goku Super Saiyan 4, Future Gohan, a new version of Trunks, Super Buu with its transformations, Metal Cooler, Dabura, and Bardock. Many of the new and old character special moves had a few touches from references. The powered Kamehameha of Goku Kaioken, the extension of Piccolo's ultimate, as well as that of Bardock, which is one of the most elaborated in the game, and also new attacks never seen before. Everything was painted with a tone of inspiration, original ideas, and a great desire to continue creating content. This was a game that unfortunately culminated the Shin Budokai mini-series, but with good impressions, ways of playing that were out of the old standards. Dims was not going to leave his legacy alone. They had another project in mind, and that of course will be the last chapter of the review series. Guys, don't forget to give a lot of support to the video with your likes so that the next chapter arrives as soon as possible. You are the ones who constantly motivate me. Comment below what you think about Shin Budokai 2, I will be glad to read your opinions. Guys, thank you so much for watching, that was all for today, and I'll be watching you in the next video. Take care and see ya!